How's it going, my dudes? This video's brought to you by Squarespace today.
It is surely the most unique of televisual experiences, befitting someone so out of the regular flow of time that a character's last or latest appearance should be more than double their actual number of appearances, from 8 to 18 episodes, and all that in just one sentence fragment. It was a doubling that saw jaws drop across lands and time zones, and quite honestly, as we pick up our own jaws off the floor, we're still processing the fact that Kovich is Daniels and Daniels is Kovich. The at first unassuming NX-01 crewman, with an untidy bunkmate, turned out to have quite the array of non-Starfleet issue gadgetry, with a lot more knowledge about this whole temporal Cold War thing than Captain Archer had reason to expect. Some kind of time traveller, although not in the H.G. Wells way, Daniels was, of course, a temporal agent from hundreds of years in the future. Despite his appearance in those 8 episodes of Star Trek Enterprise, Daniels always remained a rather mysterious character. Once he was out of the 22nd century Starfleet garb, however, he did do a lot for the twinkly timey-wimey 31st century fashion. As codename Kovich, the character also kept up the chic, always elegantly suited and tied. Kovich, even before the Daniels reveal, was equally cryptic, vastly knowledgeable but giving nothing away until the very end. We still don't know what Kovich or Daniels' exact role was, or what job titles he had, or in the Federation of the 32nd century, at once Terran debriefer and consultant for the Academy. In any case, he wasn't Starfleet, but he was definitely one of the Federation's higher-ups. Here we will use both Daniels and Kovich interchangeably where appropriate, and remember, time is the fire in which we learn. I'm Sean Ferrick for TrekCulture, and here are 10 things we now know about Agent Daniels, aka Kovich. Number 10. Under the microscope. There's no time like the present, as the folks in the temporal mechanics department like to say, so let's get to this one right away. By the shaking of hands in life itself, we discovered that Dr. Kovich had in fact been Agent Daniels, USS Enterprise, and other places all along. For 2 characters, now 1, so scrutinised, it was equally apt that behind Kovich or Daniels in that scene in the series finale of Star Trek Discovery was a microscope, and one which itself was worthy of scrutiny. From his first appearance in Die Trying, Kovich had been studied in the most microscopic of details for any clues as to his true identity. As Daniels, he had already sparked curiosity about his person, about his role in the time travel conflict, and about the 31st century. As for Kovich, any theory was fair in love after the Temporal Wars. Lanthanite, Future Guy, Supervisor, Voyager's EMH, Preserver, Section 31, Android, take your pick. Very few got the exact space-time coordinates for Temporal Agent and Daniels, however. No microscope is truly ordinary, but the one on Kovich's shelf was especially exceptional. Its last known proprietor was a certain Captain Janeway, and she had inherited the, by then, about 600-year-old piece from her grandfather. How the object came into Kovich's possession is not necessarily a matter of time travel, but perhaps simply one of antiquarianism. Then again, Kovich might well have been eminently familiar with the OG Voyager, perhaps via his fellow time travelers of the Temporal Integrity Commission aboard the USS Relativity. Amongst an array of other collectibles in Kovich's office, 2 other objects were of note. Here, a visor and a baseball. The former of these might suggest that Kovich's USS Enterprise was at least the D, and the latter more than just hints, of course, at a synchronicity with Cisco. Number 9. Tepid temporalities to total time wars. When it came to the temporal Cold War, the creators of Star Trek Enterprise weren't exactly warm to the idea in the first place. As Brannon Braga described it in the 50-year mission, The Next 25 Years, the temporal Cold War element was only added to Enterprise because the studio demanded that there be some futuristic thing in it. By logical extension, that means Daniels only existed by that studio request too. But exist they did, and Daniels and fellow temporal agents were front and centre for the fight to maintain the temporal accord. The latter phrase was, moreover, always used in the singular by Daniels in Enterprise, until his plural temporal accords in the 4th season episode Stormfront Part 1. The Accords was not originally a blanket ban on time travel tech either, but rather an agreement for its regulation and proper use, for research. When we first met Daniels, he was after Silic, a Suliban working for the Cabal, one of those factions that didn't particularly like the terms and conditions of the Time Travel Pact, interfering in historical events for their own benefit. What started as cold moved quickly to tepid, then rapidly to let's drop the adjective and just go for all-out wars. No sooner had Captain Archer and crew stopped the sphere builders than they found themselves in the paradoxical position of having to end the temporal wars, plural, before they'd technically even begun. One last mission on behalf of Daniels, now dead, meant stopping Vosk and the rest of the Nakul in 1944. When the timeline reset itself at the end of Stormfront Part 2, that was the last we saw of Daniels reborn for nearly 20 and 1,000 years. Number 8. April 5th is thrice the day. It's the date that's firmly marked in every Star Trek fan's calendar, still hoping that the Tiplana Hath will descend in 39 years. By the 24th century, annual observance of First Contact Day might have become an excuse to play rock and roll music and make Tuvok do the thing that Vulcans do, but several hundred years later, there was extra cause for another to celebrate. As he revealed to former Terran Emperor Philippa Georgiou in Die Trying, April 5th was Kovich's, and by the same measure, Daniels' birthday. That's 2 reasons for cheese pierogies and even cheesier, dad dancing. The third, if you're a Terran, would be to honour the Holy Day, as Georgiou put it. On April 5th in the Mirror Universe, the Vulcans were simply slaughtered, and not on tequila. Moreover, and birthday link or no, Daniels, now the bespectacled Kovich, had always maintained a particular interest in the other side of the looking glass, telling Georgiou in Die Trying, "I've been fascinated by Terran history and methodology since I was a boy." We know the date of the day of Daniels' birth, but that of the year is far from certain. In Cold Front, the masquerading crewman pointed to a spot on his temporal observatory approximately 900 years from now as his time of origin. The now in that was 2151, making the from circa 3051. If we then take actor Matt Winston's age at the time of filming, 31, in theory a match for the character, the roughest of estimates for Daniel's birth year then becomes around 3020. Encoded and decoded as Kovich in the reveal of Life Itself, which was set in 3191, that would make Agent Daniels something in the linear variety of 171 years old. Number 7. Will it play in Peoria? Dating at least as far back as the vaudeville era, there is one place that has come to serve as an exemplar, practically a metonym, for mainstream Middle America, the city of Peoria, Illinois. If it plays well there, it will likely play well across the United States. If we mention the land of Lincoln, then it's because a certain Daniels was born in Illinois too. At first glance in Cold Front, Daniels was the everyman, the crewman who served breakfast to Captain Archer and the canapes at the Borrowthon reception. Daniels was just your regular Joe from Illinois, albeit a spacefaring one. Like the very idea of Peoria as a substitute for a certain kind of USA, crewman of the NX-01 was always a vaudeville act in place of another, temporal agent extraordinaire. It's not without similar symbolism beyond the link to the chase itself that much later Dr. Kovich had a Kurlan Naskios in his possession in Red Directive. The individual as a community of individuals, as Captain Picard put it about the archaeological artifact, the macro into the micro and vice versa, was never more true than for Daniels, more or less human. Even the etymology of his name, presumably his last and far from reporting to Captain Archer, would indicate that only the macrocosmic of a higher power, such as time itself, could judge him. He did make up the bit about the brother though. Even by the 22nd century, Illinois will be somewhat different from today, but then, as Daniels tells a questioning Commander Tucker in Cold Front, "Oh, I'm from a place called Illinois, sir, just not the one you're familiar with." In the pre-burn period of the 31st century, and leaving the Temporal Wars out of it for a moment, Earth, and the Illinois upon it, as we learnt from Star Trek Discovery, would have been a hub for up to a diversity of 350 Federation member worlds. Not will it play, but what will play in Peoria, if Peoria can be said to exist at all. Number 6. Read all about it. Experto credite, Captain, Kovich tells Burnham in But to Connect, i.e. believe one who has had experience. Trust the expert. In this case, the expertise was a background in cognitive science with a speciality in artificial sentience and intelligence. Kovich was consulting at the request of Admiral Vance when Zora started to refuse orders. By the time of his appearance in Star Trek Discovery, Daniels was Kovich was Doctor. What of exactly was never made clear. At the start of Terra Firma Part 1, Dr. Culber told Dr. Kovich, "I wasn't aware you had any medical training." To which Kovich replied, "Yes, well, I guess I'm a man of wildly varying interests." Kovich was either medical doctor, but not practicing, as to cross Culber's radar, or had at least one PhD or equivalent, or was simply using doctor as part of the codename. Whatever his qualifications, Daniels or Kovich was very much the expert on as wide a variety of subjects as he said he was. All the way back in Star Trek Enterprise's Shockwave Part 1, he told Captain Archer how to make a set of quantum beacons in just 2 hours, and in Part 2 he reconfigured Archer's communicator to talk through time, making that one high school teacher, who had at that stage never existed, very proud. Kovich also got to demonstrate his boyhood begun knowledge of all things Terran when he informed the ex-Emperor in Die Trying that her empire had fallen long ago, and that there had been no crossing between universes in over 500 years. There's also the little matter of the Terran dagger in the office, Kovich's office. Not content with knowing about one parallel realm, Kovich was also privy to classified files on the Kelvin universe and was highly versed in the side effects of temporal and interdimensional travel, as he discussed with Dr. Culber in Terra Firma Part 1. It's almost as if Kovich was some kind of major player in the Temporal Wars. Then, of course, there are the Red Directives. First of which, that we know about, Rayner had already done 7, like the Infinity Key, seem to begin and end with Kovich. Given the future and 1,000 years were involved, we can only suppose that Kovich also had some involvement in the Crimson Command behind Calypso. Daniels also had precedent for red, the colour on his NX-01 uniform. That, however, time travel obliging, is more likely an effect without a cause.
Hi, I'm Tom Larkin, inventor of such products as Sugared Suliban Surprise.
My popular blog on Federation, Black Ops, developments in technology, and Daystrom Station imagery updates, Don't Tell Starfleet, is moving to GTN. The Galaxy Truth Network is expanding, and that wouldn't be possible without Squarespace. You can completely personalize your website with the new guided design, Squarespace Blueprint AI. Daystrom Institute approved. Easily launch your website and get discovered at warp speed thanks to integrated, optimized SEO doodads, so you show up more often to more civilizations.
Head to squarespace.com/TrekCulture for a free trial and 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain.
And remember, don't tell Starfleet.
Number 5. Novel Decoding. In the space-time that separated the end of Star Trek Enterprise and the revelation of the finale of Star Trek Discovery, Daniels remained a highly popular character for fans and beta canon alike. Moreover, in life itself, Kovich told Burnham that my real name was a bit of a red directive in and of itself. Then, for the novel series Star Trek Department of Temporal Investigations, Daniels was just more red tape. The 5-novel and e-novella series Department of Temporal Investigations, all by Christopher L. Bennett, focuses on said division of the Federation, in particular its agents Dulmer and Luxley, who we met on screen in Trials and Tribulations. Canonically, we also encountered this branch of the Time Police, Brad Boimler's phraseology, once more in the Star Trek Strange New Worlds episode Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. In the 31st century of the novels, Daniels is assistant director of the Federation Temporal Agency, often bumping into his X-Files inspired counterparts across the timeline. In the third of the DTI series, the e-novella The Collectors, we are told that the name Daniels was, in fact, merely the alias he had used in his interactions with Captain Jonathan Archer in the 2150s. His real name was Timot Danlin. One of the most prolific characters in Star Trek Online, Daniels also goes by the undercover alias Ensign Hunter in several missions of the game. In canon, Daniels, like Kovich, could still be a pseudonym, but we'll need more than temporal investigations to find out. Number 4. Death will not have become you. We know, no doubt, only a fraction of a percentage of the many lives Kovich spoke about having lived in life itself. We can say with confidence, however, that the statement is true in the figurative, but especially in the literal sense. In Star Trek Discovery's 4th season episode, The Examples, Kovich gave the following brutally honest bit of counselling to Dr. Culber at the latter's request. Why me? It's the question you ask yourself every morning and every evening. No one else gets a second chance, so why me? Whether writers and producers had decided on Daniels by that point or not, it does feel, even without the hindsight, that in his advice to Culber, Kovich was also talking about himself. Kovich, confirmed as Daniels, had gotten more than just one second chance at life. For a temporal agent, death is merely discourse, in a manner of speaking, a transitory side effect. Having shuffled off this space-time continuum at the wrong end of Silik's pistol in Coldfront, Daniels sure was one wealth of information, for a cloud of vapour, in Captain Archer's words in Shockwave Part 1. Not to be outdone by himself, Daniels, or rather that version of him, died again on Phlox's table in Stormfront Part 1, from what I believe was later called Chakotay's chronomorphosis syndrome. During the run of Star Trek Enterprise, Daniels very nearly died for a third time too. In a 2017 interview for the Warp 5 podcast on Trek FM, Trek writer Mike Sussman revealed that, in his initial version of Future Tense, co-written with Phyllis Strong, he had planned for Daniels to appear toward the end of the episode to pick up the damaged timeship. Daniels would have then revealed that the body inside the vessel was in fact his. A decision from the higher-ups to keep things more mysterious put paid to that idea, however. Number 3. Theatre of the Lemniscate. After the initial shock of the reveal that Dr. Kovich was Daniels and vice versa, we all began to wonder if, like that infinity loop bringing us back round again, the end for Kovich had all been planned from the beginning. Fortunately, the wait for answers was decidedly more finite. In an interview with Cinema Blend's Mick Jost, Star Trek Discovery's showrunner Michelle Paradise gave a few details on the big reveal. "It's something that evolved," she said. "The way David Cronenberg plays Kovich is so interesting and mysterious, and we found ourselves at any time he was on screen just leaning in and wondering, what is this character? I don't remember if it was season 4 or 5. It may have been season 4. Two of our writers, I think it was Carlos Cisco and Eric J. Robbins, pitched, what if it was Daniels? As Paradise also noted in the interview, at least as far as season 5 of Discovery is concerned for definite, there are Easter eggs to the Doctor's true identity placed throughout, such as his old-timey habit of writing with pen and paper. Perhaps even Captain Archer himself picked up that legal pad for Daniels or Kovich in Detroit. One of the most evocative of those, now in hindsight, links is the Infinity Room, introduced in Discovery's 5th season opener, Red Directive. Time travel might well have been outlawed by the 32nd century, or so we're told, but Kovich's secure hideout had all the hallmarks of a Daniels-style temporal observatory, if decidedly more monotone. A bit theatrical for my taste, but some like that sort of thing, Kovich noted to Captain Burnham and Admiral Vance about the place, a nod perhaps to the fact that in his youth, with the technology afforded to him as a temporal agent, Daniels certainly liked to put on a show. Number 2. And other chronotonic connections. It matters little to canon whether the flow of things was set forth in advance. Like any time traveller worth their salt, Kovich is now his own retcon. In that sense, and with the ease of us for such a rewind, we're all going to have to be temporal agents, travelling back along the timeline along all of Kovich's appearances in Star Trek Discovery to derive and even make meaning and connection with Daniels. You might say this is temporal observations from within that very observatory itself. Let's begin in the somewhat dangerous territory of Season 3. In Terra Firma Part 1, a possible cure for Georgiou's interdimensional ills is located on Danus 5. In the next breath, Kovich also mentions movie night, which they also had on the Discovery. But still, coincidence is a trap for the linearly timed. Consider yourself lucky to have skipped the Temporal Wars, Kovich said to Culver earlier in the episode. Carl, the Guardian of Forever's copy of the Star Dispatch, had no article on Daniels, however. In the Season 3 finale, That Hope Is You, Part 2, Kovich is also very focused on Discovery's spore drive. Simple concern for rebuilding the Federation, or already thinking 1,000 years ahead to craft. In the 4th season episode, The Galactic Barrier, Kovich is at a meeting to discuss first contact with Species 10C. Amongst the cornucopia of comm badges and communicators on the table in front of him are two very particular universal translators from the 22nd century. The wearable clip-on 2155 version, first seen in Demons, and the larger model, circa 2151, used by Hoshi Sato on various occasions, both in proximity to Kovich. Back one episode in But to Connect, the piece that plays as Stamets enters the room to speak to Kovich and Saru about Zora is Bach's Brandenburg Concerto No. 3. That was first heard in Star Trek in the Next Generation episode A Matter of Time, the one with the fake future historian in a very real time ship. Rasmussen, from the 22nd century, was probably on the temporal agent's to-do list. Now with added symbolic resonance is Tilly's NX-01 snow globe, seen at the start of All Is Possible. In that episode, Kovich is consulting for the newly reopened Starfleet Academy. One might say that today's exercise is about the very future of Starfleet, Kovich tells Tilly. That is a sentence which just about sums up every mission Daniels, though not Starfleet himself, was ever sent on. Number 1. The habitual softness of scrambled eggs. Though he wasn't visibly present for its unveiling, accompanied by the appropriate extra-diegetic tune, we wouldn't be surprised if Dr. Kovich petitioned for the commissioning of Archer's space dock in the first place. Kovich's younger self was particularly fond of the pioneering captain of the first Warp 5 ship. Given the fact that Enterprise didn't go back to Earth between dropping Clang off on Kronos and the Great Plume of Argosauria, it's almost certain Daniels was on board for its historic mission from the very beginning in April 2151, perhaps taking time travelers leave every so often when no one was looking, until his apparent death in September that same year. Archer wasn't shocked either, save for the shift change, that Daniels was bringing the breakfast in cold front. "You like your scrambled eggs soft. Have I ever brought them to you any other way?" Daniels would later use as argument to convince the captain to help him capture Silik. Understandably, just wanting to get on with his mission, Archer often clashed with Daniels in temporal agent form. Without Daniels, however, and in a list only time travel can provide, Enterprise would have been blamed for Paragon 2, the Xindi reptilians would have launched a bioweapon in the 21st century Detroit, and there'd have been no whistle-stop tour of that corridor of the Enterprise J, plus Xindi crew member desperately searching for their initiation medal. No, Daniels would have meant no Federation, no humanity, and no Archer space dock. "Goodbye, Jonathan. Captain, it's been a privilege," was the first name-ish basis upon which Daniels left. Archer for the last time that we know of in Stormfront Part 2. Archer didn't quite give the same fond farewell in return, but then he'd probably been eating a lot of hard scrambled eggs. That is everything for our list today, folks. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to Jack Kiley for writing the article upon which this video is based. Make sure you go and check that out on the website. I have been Sean for TrekCulture. You can follow me at Sean Ferrick on the various socials. Make sure that you're following TrekCulture as well, because you're great and cool, and thank you. You look after yourselves till I'm talking to you again. Make sure you live long and prosper. Thanks very much.